Blog Talk Radio.
Choices, decisions, frustrations, and pain. Knowing I'm going to forget her someday. While I still can, I'll challenge all my loved ones, every friend, to look inside their hearts and understand that I will love them. I will love them while I still can.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm also the founder of Alzheimer Speaks resource website. If you haven't visited us at www.alzheimerspeaks.com, please do so. There you will find a lot of variety of information. You see, Alzheimer Speaks is an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. And we believe that by joining forces and sharing knowledge and having everyday conversations like we're going to have today about life with dementia, that we're going to be able to remove the stigmas attached to memory loss and help those living with the disease live with purpose. Together, I know we can make a difference, and we can educate ourselves by learning more. So many out there are filled with knowledge and don't even know it because they're feeling overwhelmed and they see the road ahead of them, but yet there's always somebody behind them as well. And so it's so important for us to share knowledge. And I would really appreciate it if you haven't liked our radio page, but also go to Facebook and our Twitter pages and like those as well. It's an easy way then to be able to share the information we're putting out. I think you'd be shocked at how many times you share information with a circle of friends about dementia, and then all of a sudden you find out someone you are very close to is dealing with it and you didn't know. People tell me that all the time when I go out and speak. I'll raise that question, and people are amazed that, typically about 98 to almost 100% of the group has been touched by dementia. This is a conversation we're not comfortable having, and that needs to change. And we've got a brilliant influencer in the world of dementia with us today, and I will introduce her shortly. We also would love to invite you on the radio show to be part of the conversation, and you can do that in two ways. You can use your chat box to go ahead and write a comment in if you're listening by your computer, or you can call in, and that number is 714-364-4757. Again, that's 714-364-4757. Now, before I introduce our wonderful guest today, I do want to just highlight a few different resources for you. People are always asking, how do I find the Alzheimer's Association closest to me? And what I recommend, since we've got a global audience, is go to Alzheimer's Disease International. They are the organization of all the Alzheimer's associations around the world. There you'll not only find information as to who's close to you, but you're going to find insights and information and research on global issues. It's just a wonderful site. And so, again, that's called Alzheimer's Disease International, or they go by ADI. The Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation is also a wonderful tool that you can tap into. They focus more on holistic approaches. So food and diet, exercise, meditations, and they have been around for over 20 years. So go check out Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation as well. And today we're going to be speaking particularly on Lewy body. And they have their own association, which is a great force because, again, it understands the specifics of the disease. Some of the other diseases in the dementia umbrella are frontal temporal lobe along with Alzheimer's, and they each have, again, their own associations. The National Aphasia Association is a great tool, too, when people are having a difficult time speaking. And then kind of the recreational side, we've got Music First with Choral Health, and music is so powerful. It's something most of us incorporate into our days, and we shouldn't let that go by the wayside when someone has dementia as well. And Music First, actually, they kind of do prescriptions for music, so they can help people change their moods. They can help them relax and go to sleep, wake up, eat, all kinds of different things. So check out Music First with Choral Health. They also have an app. Puzzle with Me is a great puzzle that is designed for adults with dementia. Bigger pieces, fewer pieces, and more age-appropriate pictures. Jiminy Wicket is a wonderful social engagement activity. It's croquet that can be played by families intergenerationally, or they also go out to the schools and introduce dementia to the students and then can match them up with a memory care unit where they can go ahead and play croquet. So it's a pretty fascinating thing. So again, if you have time to just click that button and like us, I would appreciate you doing that. Again, your efforts have made a big impact because we were named the #1 influencer online for Alzheimer's by ShareCare and Dr. Oz. And we did not do that alone. That is from all of you spreading the word. So again, I thank you very, very much for doing that, and I hope for your continued support in that as well. So let me go ahead and introduce our first guest here. Jane Sweeney is, you're just going to adore her. I just recently got to know her, and she is just a wonderful, wonderful individual. And she has written a book, Caregiving, My Love Story, and it's all about facing dementia. And she tells of this love story between herself and Bernie. She says two hearts united by God. The man he was and the woman who loved him, cared for him until the end. She is going to talk about, what it was like to get that diagnosis, the shock and the disbelief and the pain. But what I love so much about her book is that it is a beautifully written, but it's not only heartbreaking, but more so it's heartwarming. And it truly is an inspirational guide to all caregivers, teaching them that you are never alone and always choose love and happiness over fear, which is a pretty heavy and big lesson that we should live by in our life as a whole. She was also named Woman of the Year in 2013. So let me get Jane on the line here. Hi, Jane. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, and thank you for having me as your guest. I'm looking forward to your audience hearing what my love story was, because I love my husband and I want to help people care.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. You have written an absolutely fantastic book, and my mom would love it because the cover is red, and this is kind of her fire engine red color. So my mom would have grabbed your book off the shelf in 2 seconds. Now, can you tell us a little bit about, why don't we start with the diagnosis, a little bit about Bernie. What exactly was he diagnosed with and when?
First of all, it was a long time in coming to get a diagnosis, and it was June 18, 2009, when I ran to the phone to call his internist of 21 years to get Bernie to the doctor because he showed marked signs of suspicions that had been going on for many years. And that morning when I went downstairs to have a cup of coffee, he told me that I wasn't home last night. And I said, what? He said, I don't know where you were, but you didn't come home, which is part of spousal infidelity syndrome that sometimes rears its head with Lewy bodies. So I got him to the internist, his very dear friend, and he gave him the MMSE, which is the Mini Mental Status Exam, or sometimes it's called the Mini State Exam, as to where Bernie was. And Bernie thought he had performed beautifully, and of course the doctor said he had Alzheimer's, which was only part of the story, and it would take 3 diagnoses before I finally got it correct.
Okay, and that's one of the most frustrating things that people say over and over is how long it takes to get a diagnosis when it comes to dementia. It's such a tricky disease, and it overlaps so many different things, and so many of the doctors just aren't educated. So it's so important getting to the right people, getting that referral, and I think and this is just my view, I'll see if you agree, but I think people aren't used to being advocates for themselves with the doctors, especially like with my folks. They just thought whatever the doctor said was God, and they never questioned. And it was like, no, we need to question, because we're not getting answers here that are making sense, or solving our problem. And I think people really have to learn to be an advocate and push for those referrals to the right people. Do you see that in your work?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Fortunately, I have 2 doctors in my family, and my youngest daughter is a pediatric nurse at Johns Hopkins for 18 years now. And we were not novices to medical situations, but the problem was that I think that doctors are as good as their training and their experience, and we have many fabulous doctors. But because the information is recent as far as medical studies, many of the wonderful internists and geriatricians and specialists are not up on Lewy body dementia. And one of my missions is to not only educate them and to speak to medical students and to nursing students, and I have invitations that are standing, and we're formulating what I call a curriculum enhancement program to have the medical students be aware of Lewy body dementia and all the dementias that there are over 50 kinds of dementia, and we need to understand how to care, especially for the people with Lewy bodies, because it could be as much as 20 to 25% of all dementia. It's under the Parkinson's syndrome, but there is no medicine or cure for it.
Yeah, and you had said you had heard 50 types of dementia. I've heard 70 to 120, and I've heard that from different doctors. I don't think they really know, because then there's sub-dementias, within different categories too, because it really is such a baby disease. There's so little known about it compared to what we need to know on this. But if it's 50 or 120, it doesn't make any difference. It's an awful lot. And we can see how confusing that can be. And I think people have to correlate it to cancer. You don't go to a skin cancer doctor if you've got lung cancer. But the specialties haven't developed in a fast enough pace, in my opinion, with this disease and in the numbers that we need. So I'm hoping that that's something that the medical schools are really going to start pushing people in specific directions, because I think it's needed. Because these diseases, even though they fall under the same umbrella, they can have very different symptoms and can be very, very confusing to not only the person diagnosed, but their loved ones and coworkers and neighbors and friends with that.
Absolutely right. And I wanted to say something about the diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
If people keep probing and keep reading and broadening their knowledge, which you mentioned earlier, they will feel not only empowered, but they will have many more resources to help others. And when we got the diagnosis, we knew it was ours. We owned it. It was a challenge, not because we owned it, but what was unnerving was that it would write its own end. But to be empowered, gain knowledge, and to be able to care for our loved one. And that's the hope, and that's why I want to change the culture of caregiving. We know we're going to have an escalation of the number of cases of dementia. Instead of being depressed or instead of feeling hopeless, we need to know how to care and make it a mission to learn as much as we can to love the person.
Mm-hmm. And that's true. I really think this disease is here to teach us to get back to basics in terms of why do we exist. We're not here for money and things and status. I think we're here to learn how to interact and really develop close relationships. And we've lost our sense of community on a lot of levels, and this disease is going to force that back because one person can't do it alone, nor should they. And so I kind of try to frame it in a positive light in terms of, why is this disease even here? And because I think it's here to teach us something, and I think it's here to teach us some pretty big lessons.
Well stated, and you learned that from caring for your mother for so many years.
Exactly. Can you tell people a little bit about what's it like to have Lewy body dementia versus a regular Alzheimer's? What did you see, were some of the differences, and why is it important to know that?
Okay, the differences were very marked. Sometimes the rampant suspicions coming in the night, coming in the daytime, and repeated suspicions, whether it was car keys, whether it was someone stealing the checkbook, someone stealing money, the tremendous paranoia escalates. It's like a wave. It comes and goes, and you can never anticipate it. You never know what's going to happen. One of the first things that shows its head is hallucinations and delusions. Now, Ernie would speak of things that were not there. And when you go into hallucinations, it becomes part of the psychiatric part of the brain. He never knew what hit him. He was never aware that he was saying these things, and therefore could not recall or could not discuss in a rational, cognitive way. In the middle of the night, he would wake me quickly and say, get them. They're on the wall. And I said, are they spiders? And he said, yes. And I said, I hate black. And they would disappear. The hallucination of our granddaughter walking in the kitchen that I almost bumped into, and he held me back. And there was nothing there. And so I would guess that she was in a yellow dress. And he said, no, she's in a blue dress. And I would say, I love blue. It's her Christmas dress. She's so beautiful. And then the hallucination would go. Also, they become very suspicious about people stealing from them. And Bernie ended up going to bed with 3 wallets in his golf shorts toward the end. It's the brain that is being destroyed on the end of the neurons, the synapses, that causes this type of thinking. It had nothing to do with his intelligence. It had nothing to do with his kindness and his love. It all happens in the brain, and he knew nothing of this.
Wow,
making it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It makes it even more important for the caregiver not to be upset by these hallucinations. And in Lewy bodies, they think of it often as a hallucination in color, or with children or animals. Most of the time, they're not disturbing to the person if you can get to the hallucination by guessing something or diverting using distraction. One time, Bernie was talking about, in the middle of the night again, about the people in the kitchen. And I guessed that they were all 6 foot tall, or if they were black and white. And he said, no, they're in red. I said, oh, that's the most beautiful color, and the hallucination was gone.
Wow.
It's amazing. And it was never frightening to me. Mm-hmm. And it was never something that I wasn't able to pull him out of by learning the major technique of going to his hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to say that 8 to 10 years before we had Bernie diagnosed the first time in 2009, he began to do certain things cognitively with his thinking and his organization and his executive function and his tracking expenditures that were strange. And I knew something was going on in his mind that he was not aware of. We would have a conversation about planning, going to dinner the next night. The next day came, he never recalled it. And he wasn't playing games with me. As I said to a friend of mine recently, it's like a player piano where it's making beautiful music, and then all of a sudden it goes, the mind is disconnecting, and the person is not playing games. They simply are unable to make these rational connections and to link information. One of the greatest things I've found is that you cannot ask them 2 or 3 things in a row, like go to the dresser drawer and get the yellow socks out and get your tennis shoes. You can't do that because they can't cognitively put these together. I couldn't say to Bernie, get channel 27 on the television or 423. He simply couldn't make those connections. And by knowing that, I was able to tune in the TV show. I was able to do many things that would help him. And this went on for 8 to 10 years.
Okay. So did your patients ever wear thin in this role? I would imagine there's got to be some times where it took its toll on you. I would think that would just be normal.
Yes. Because I pray daily for patients, and sometimes I talk about the alphabet soup of caregiving in one of my speeches for Manor Care, who's hired me to speak for them nationally at their facilities. It's HCR out of Cleveland. And I talk about the alphabet soup, distractions, dangers, and do-overs. I had to distract Bernie constantly by putting in front of him golf magazines or playing music, sometime at 6:30 in the morning. And that's what gave me more empowerment, and it gave me more patience. Because I knew that if I lost my patience, he would react hurt. He would react as if I were questioning his love and his gentleness, which would get you nowhere and would fuel the situation. Because he was never doing any of this willfully. And that's what gave me a lot of sustenance. It gave me a lot of important solitude that I could gather myself. And you mentioned earlier about why we're here, and I know that our Lord wanted me to develop a great deal of patience, and this is what it takes as you well know.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I wanted to scream, and I would turn the shower on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I would just scream, or I was in the car doing errands, and I would rehearse how I was going to get control of my emotions, because he didn't do this on purpose.
Yeah, I would scream in the car sometimes when no one was around me because I didn't want anyone to see me or hear me, you know. But but I think it's here to teach us tolerance, and it really can be in your face, but how to be loving and accept that they're not doing this to bug you, that it's not on purpose, and that we all deserve to be respected and understood and appreciated and loved. And in the world we live in, we've gotten so busy and so fast paced that we forget to slow down and just be loving, and that's so sad. That's just, to me, so extremely sad. And I'm one of them. I mean, it took me a while to learn to slow down and pay attention and appreciate the little stuff, and to push the status and the money and the stuff aside, because that really, that didn't warm my heart at all. And when you lose someone or something, or a part of something, that's when we kind of figure it out of what's important in our life, and why we don't teach this at a young age, but instead we push them down a different path. It's sad to me.
You're absolutely right. And one thing that I noticed on the trail of dementia is that many people think back to their grandparents or their favorite aunt or their favorite uncle who was so kind to them, who took the time to take them to the ball game or to take them to a movie. And they relish this quiet, beautiful time of sharing. And that's what's available to everyone who's a caregiver. If they will reorient themselves to caring, it's so important. Now, I have a deep faith, Laurie, and without my faith, I don't think that myself, my family, would have learned what God was trying to put before us. And when I had the graphic artist do my book cover, the red is a door that's open, and the message is, there's no handle. Come in. We can help you caregive. We know how to caregive. And my book is filled with resources from the internet and books that will help in learning and in making us more patient. On the front of the book, I have a door knocker that I've copyrighted. It's a gold wedding ring with the human heart resting inside. And the message is, love is the only thing that we carry beyond this physical world. It's the only thing that matters. And in the whole circle of gold, God has given us all human nature. And it is by staying connected and by loving each other as a community and helping each other through the illnesses, and also being there for the happy times. When Bernie was on this journey, we had many, many happy times. We laughed, we loved the whole time. And even in his placement, where he had a psychosis and he went after me, so the doctor said, if he touches you, you can't take him home. And even then, he had 9 months at a care facility, and we laughed and we dressed him in his golf attire with beautiful vests because he was losing so much weight. And he always had a joy about him and a humor. In fact, one cute story was he kept wanting to marry me when he was in the facility, and he was so effusive. in his gentle love and tenderness and kissing. So I had the lock switch from the bathroom to the main door of his room because I thought people would walk in on us. And he loved that when I would tease in that way. So after about 2 weeks, he kept saying, I have to marry you. I have to marry you. I'm so in love with you.
Oh.
It was so sweet. And then one day he said, what are we going to do about your husband? It was so sweet and so gentle. So the point is, we had many, many years of happiness and joy and laughter because we loved and because I wanted every day to be present to Bernie. Mm-hmm. And I elicited from him the happiness and the humor and the joy. And I did that with deep prayer, solitude, and asking God every day for his mercy and guidance, because I did not know where this would take us. And what happened is, I look back now, I have no regrets. I have beautiful memories. And because in this whole ring of gold we're all mortal, it made me address earlier rather than later the purpose of our lives. And what I'm trying to say about caregiving, it can be absolutely beautiful and wonderful and life-giving. One person told me that her husband had been a big executive and that she had rarely had tender time with him, and that when he got Alzheimer's, it gave her that time. And that was a gift that her husband gave her because they had many days of gentleness and times. And every caregiver can claim that, Laurie.
I think that's really true. They have to look for it, though. They have to know that it's still there. They have to believe and have faith in their relationships. And I think so many times we get so overburdened with the tasks at hand that we forget that you still have a core of a relationship. We've got a question here. Let's see your comment. Here he's written, I hear people that got diagnosed with Lewy bodies and others say that they were diagnosed with dementias with Lewy body, which leads me to believe Lewy bodies could be a virus. Are they the same or different?
Okay, let me answer it this way. The jury is still out on all the ramifications of Lewy bodies. But we know from Dr. Dennis Dixon, who spoke 2 years at my husband's Mind-Brain Symposium at Florida Gulf Coast University, which is held in the second week of March. We know that the researchers are certain it is part of the Parkinson's syndrome. There are like MS and ALS and progressive supranuclear palsy. They're all part of Parkinson's. Most dementias are not part of Parkinson's, but Lewy bodies is. Now, there is something completely separate, which is a dementia that follows in the latter stages of Parkinson's that is not Lewy bodies. But many times people will have a mixed dementia. And in Bernie's case, he had Alzheimer's and Lewy bodies. Sometimes they project, from what we know, 25% of the time they could be overlapping. I hope. So what I'm trying to say is that the researchers still don't know everything about dementia and about Lewy bodies. But what we do know is very powerful. And the website, lbda.org, is the Lewy Body Dementia Association organization in Georgia. It is phenomenal. It's like sitting in front of Encyclopedia Britannica. It's like clicking on multiple books and references. Now, they have 9 doctors on a scientific council that vet everything that goes on their website. And the interesting thing is that the more you go there, the more you learn about the support care groups for Lewy bodies. The case stories and the case histories of people who discovered that their loved one had 2 or 3 dementias in addition to Lewy bodies. And the website is packed with constructive guidelines and helpful suggestions because we want to live our life with joy and love and happiness. It might be kidney disease or it might be a heart attack, but this happens to be dementia, and it's nothing to be afraid of. When I used to counsel some people, I used to say, if it bothers you, think that it's a bowl of Jell-O and that you're going to put whipped cream on it. Whatever you want to do to lighten the fact that because you get a diagnosis, it means many things to many people, but it doesn't have to be the end. It can just be a beginning. Now, I want to say something about the Lewy Body Dementia Association. One of the doctors, besides Dr. Dennis Dixon, on the Scientific Council is Dr. Ian McKeith. Now, he is, quote, Mr. Lewy Bodies in Europe, in England specifically. Now, he is an international collaborator with Mensa Cura, which is an organization in Iceland. Mensa Cura is Latin for cure the mind. It's an organization that's been in existence for many years, and they are coming up, they have actually an EEG biomarker for early detection, differential diagnosis, and the management of CNS disorders. Now, this is so critical, and they're trying to bring it over here and worldwide to many of the research organizations. And they believe that they have a way of using EEGs, which are the brain waves, to determine an early diagnosis for dementia, and in particular Lewy bodies.
Well, that'll be wonderful. I know 60 Minutes just had a episode on probably a month ago that was where they had followed a community, and they were pretty shocked at the results, because they did the brain autopsies at the end. And what they found was that some people with plaques and tangles had no signs of dementia, and others that were diagnosed with dementia, I'm going to say that wrong. People who were diagnosed with dementia had no plaques and tangles in some cases, and others did not have. It was just opposite. I can't think of what I'm trying to say here, And so the ones that didn't have any signs also had plaques and tangles, so it was kind of backwards. And so it makes me wonder how much, because there's so much talk about plaques and tangles, for dementia, and is that really accurate or not? And from what they found, not so much. It made them kind of question, is that an accurate telltale sign or not?
Well, that's excellent that you raised that point, Laurie. I've attended a number of conferences, and some of the most brilliant scientists are still trying to uncover what are some of the causes. They do know that, and this is a recent diagnosis from a friend of mine who was an MIT graduate and a husband of a dear friend who went to NIH, and after being given 2 separate diagnoses, he went there for extensive testing, and they found no amyloid plaques. So what the conclusion was that he had Lewy bodies but did not have Alzheimer's. And what I'm trying to say is that the jury is still out with the scientists. They're working very hard. All over the world they're collaborating because they know that this question of dementia, some call it an avalanche, some call it the silver tsunami, but what they do know is so little of what they're going to know. And my point for caregiving is that it's a major problem in healthcare and to diagnose it correctly. But once you know the parameters, you can help. In other words, we think back to AIDS in the 80s, where we were all very upset, very frightened when this horrific affliction came on. And they poured millions of dollars, billions, into the research. And they've been able to come so far forward that babies today, my daughter tells me, are born without AIDS, though the mother had AIDS, which is a remarkable progression. And
yep,
we hope
that's huge.
But we understand that there are many diseases that have taken years, and the scientists really do not know the causes. They know that there are indicators, like you said, when they do autopsies. But there may be something that a new scientist comes up with that will lead us completely in a new path. The question is, dementia is here to stay for a long time, and how we approach it and how we learn the tools of the trade to make living with it a most beautiful experience rather than a death sentence. It's how we live life that the reason I wrote my book. It's that when you love someone and they're going to die on you, what are you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. We all have a choice. And the beautiful choice is that we can get all the support we need through knowledge and learning. Now, I have a couple of stories in my book that are very humorous because Bernie was brilliant. He worked at the World Bank in Washington for 18 years, and he graduated top of his class at the Ben Franklin Accounting School in 1949. He was so humorous, 100% Irish, and he was so gifted with humor that I wanted to, in his memory, talk about how he lived life and how he affected the people around him with love and joy for his Jesus, his Christ, for his fellow man. And I wanted to tell you about the picnic blanket, which was part of the Irish humor. When the diagnosis comes down, or your suspicions, which have probably been around for a long time, that someone's playing games with you or someone is not doing what they were normally supposed to do, that you can broaden your support. Tell your neighbors, tell your close friends. My husband was furious when I told the doctor some of the things that were going on. That's because he didn't realize, and no one with Lewy bodies realizes the full extent of their loss. Mm-hmm. Now, some people with dementia, Alzheimer's type of dementia, do realize that they're forgetting. And that's what we call a very painful realization. And that may take a different approach to caregiving when the person knows that they have a dementia. And there's also a third category. Up at the Bird Institute at the University of South Florida, where they have 3 floors. One complete diagnostic floor is for Parkinson's. The middle floor is for the diagnosis for Alzheimer's, and the first floor is for the treatment of people in care groups who have already been diagnosed. But they have 7 different disciplines in the medical field to diagnose a person completely with what is going on. And they have a third category called the worried well. These are the people who suspect that they don't have at their beck and call the amount of information they used to have. Their recall is waning, their forgetfulness, and they're very worried that they have Alzheimer's, perhaps because of the family history or because they feel like losing it. Mm-hmm. But I want people to talk about, I want to go back to the picnic blanket. On the lower corner, on the right lower corner, you put all your friends and your neighbors. On the upper right corner, you put your church friends, your book club friends. your bridge group, any of the clubs or organizations you belong to, the Knights of Columbus, the Elks, the Rotary Club. You include them because this is a long road, and you're going to need their help. And believe you me, people will be very compassionate, very understanding and loving. In the upper left-hand corner, you invite all of your family. This is an opportunity for many relationships to be reconciled. I said to one man when he said, oh, no, they couldn't invite their 5 children. That wasn't the way it was going to work. And I said to him, you know, you really love your family, and this is their mother. Don't put yourself as a jury and a judge. Invite the children to address their mother and to live the remaining years with love and compassion and gentleness toward the mother, or to address things that they may harbor in their heart. Allow them the time that they have to love their mother. And he said the next time that 2 of them are going to fly in and help. Always invite the family and try never to make judgments. Maybe the son had very good reasons for not speaking to his father. But now that his father's been diagnosed, they need that time. Just allow them to come into the picture and just keep allowing. And that goes for friends, and it goes for brothers and sisters. It's so beautiful, the transformation. And you will help both, not only the person with dementia achieve a peace, but the family members. In the lower corner, I want you to put on that picnic blanket, which is very wide now for your support as a caregiver, I want you to put the people in the doctor's office that are so compassionate, the doctors who are so understanding and caring. I want you to put there the people in the grocery store and the people in your support groups. Please find some support groups. They do it for heart transplant. They do it for, they gather for kidney transplants, for brain surgeries. Please find a support group and try 2 or 3. So the picnic blanket is very wide and anchored. And then as the author of this story, I say I take away the word picnic because nothing in this is a picnic.
Yep. Harry just made a comment here in the chat box saying the National Institute on Aging has a free publication called Lewy Body Dementia for patients, families, and professionals, which he said is just wonderful. And you can receive a free copy. He's got their link in the box here, which is nia.nih.gov/Alzheimer's or 800-438-4380. That's 800-438-4380. Thank you for sending that in, Harry. I appreciate
Harry, thank you. I am so thrilled with this publication. This was one of the most succinct and well-researched publications. There's not only the National Institute of Aging, which is the number and the link that you just gave, Harry, but the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Strokes co-authored this, and there's another number, 1-800-352-9424, 1-800-352-9424, and the publication is free. It's about 40 pages. One of the consultants on that was Angela Taylor, who is the administrator, director of programs for the Lewy Body Dementia Association. And there were 4 other acknowledgments by the 2 national institutes, and Lisa Snyder and Christina Giolotti, University of California in San Diego. Now, the thing about this booklet is that organizations can request up to 5 copies and NIH will send them at no cost. And each individual can get a copy at no cost. You can also order this through lbda.org. Now, the thing about Lewy Body Dementia Association is I want to mention a friend of Harry, Gary Joseph LeBlanc, who has been writing a column in a newspaper north of Tampa in Florida. He cared for his father for 5 years, and I know that he has 4 books on dementia, and I know that Harry is a very dear friend of his. Thank you very much, Gary. Bye.
Yeah, Gary does a great job. In fact, and Harry's going to be part of this too, but they are going to be rolling out on June 1st, Dementia Mentors. And we're actually going to do our next show next Tuesday. We'll be talking about dementia mentors, so that's pretty exciting that group will be rolling out, and the information that they'll be able to share to have a mentor who actually has dementia. I think is going to be fabulous and will really help alleviate some of the fear and the stress by developing some of those supports there. Can you tell us, how did getting a diagnosis affect you personally as a caregiver?
It gave me a great deal of peace. It made me realize that there was something that I could do to help Bernie. It gave me encouragement that life was beginning in a new way. And you can project to many things that I still had Bernie. And I asked the Lord to help me each day care for him one more day and to guide me and to let me live long enough to care for him. It gave me strength because I knew that love would be the difference. And I knew that my choice was to be there and be connected at all times. And not only did I learn volumes of information, I was able to be there and be a better human being. And now I have a whole new facet of my life, the last third of my life, that I can live and help people. And that for some sole reason, God gave me this beautiful husband to love and enjoy and laugh with, a most beautiful life, and that now I could give back in a special way. And I want to mention Eden Alternatives. It's EDEN Alternatives. I went to a conference in Nashville about a month ago. Dr. Bill Thomas and Jude Thomas have tried to change the culture of how we care for people in the last third of their life. And it's a beautiful concept of care partners. And what is so exciting is that we live, the way we live, is a measurement of our joy and our happiness. And at the end of our life, we can look back with happiness and joy that is really beyond measure because we have loved.
Very true. Yeah, I think that's a really nice perspective, the way you are going after this whole thing. Harry says, "Bless you, Jane. You inspire all of us." So yeah, you really have a nice way at looking at this. Were you like that from the beginning of the diagnosis, or did it take you a while? I know for me, it took me a while to arrive. And to be able to really reframe things. And I think I reframed them probably personally, quietly, but didn't really talk about it publicly, the changes. But now they're just so evident to me. It's just like, wow.
Well, I love your word, reframe, because it's a strong word. It gives you motivation. The mind is very interesting. There are words that cause us to give in and be hopeless. And reframe says, I have a choice. And you know, Laurie, the first time I knew Bernie was having real trouble cognitively, I cried and I cried and I cried. Not only was the life that we had together slipping from us, I did not want to lose my husband. I wanted to love and live every day and a happiness and all the wonderful things that life has to offer, whether it's walking or playing golf or going out to dinner. I wanted all the joy and happiness, and that was slipping away, and no one could control it. And I cried many, many nights because I love the intimacy with my husband. And sex in dementia is a huge umbrella. It's something that we need to talk about. We need to talk about when a man and a woman love each other and they have to have that taken from them gradually. It's a very sad, long road, but you can make it on the other side in gratitude. And I found that every time I was crying my eyes out because I was losing this beautiful man to a disease, that it was in gratitude that I found strength and more patience, as you mentioned earlier. It's something you acquire. And a lot of times I just had to say, Lord, you're going to have to take this because I can't handle this part of it.
Yeah, and it's the gratitude piece is huge. I think the sex piece too is something that we don't talk about. You know, it's people are embarrassed by it, and they shouldn't be. And there's so many different ways to be sexual too. Just touch. You know, we all like to be touched. And there shouldn't be embarrassment, and we should make room for that. And we need to have more conversations so that people feel comfortable addressing that as well.
Laurie, touch. It's one of our five senses, and it is the one thing that lovers always experience to nth degree. And they can't touch each other enough. They can't hold hands enough. They can't hug enough when you're falling in love. And it's the touch that carries the relationship through dementia. It's the gentle touch that is a lifeline. And oftentimes in advanced stages, people may not be able to have their mind work, that they understand the gentle touch, the caress, knowing that they're connecting in this relationship that has been so important in their whole life. And they're continuing to build on that. I must tell you, I wrote this chapter, Sex and Dementia, Sensitivity and Sensuality, for a specific reason. I have a cute story in there about Viagra. And I talked to one of Bernie's golf buddies, and he said, why don't you just put the chapter that? And I said, because I'm a lady, and that's a lot in your face. But I will put the story in the chapter, and he loved it. It was something that's so sweet. And I said, it's probably because when you mention the word Viagra, men get a big smile on their face, and so do the women.
Oh, too funny. Well, I think that's great. Can we continue this conversation? I need to kind of do our mid-program highlights, and then I've got a second guest which will be with us for just about 10 minutes. But I would love to continue this conversation if you still have time, Jane.
I do. I'll hold on.
Okay, sounds good. I will put you on hold, do our mid-program highlights, and then we'll introduce our next guest, and we will come back and talk more with Jane Sweeney. You need to get her book. It's called Caregiving, My Love Story, Facing Dementia, and it's just, you'll find it very heartwarming and inspiring. So let me get on here with with our mid-program highlights. If you're not familiar with our radio show, all of our shows are archived. And our last show was on students in dementia and the need for more students to get trained in this industry. And we had actually our intern, Michelle Remold, with us, and she just did a great job, along with her professor, Dr. Elaine Eschbach, with the University of Northern Iowa. And then on the second half of the show, we had a certified recreational therapeutic specialist, Marla Kurtz, who just is doing some really neat work in that industry with people at home, helping them with rec therapy. Our next session, next Tuesday, will be with the Dementia Chats founding members, and I'm really excited about that, so I really hope you can join us for that show. Dementia Mentors is going to be exactly what it says, people with dementia mentoring others who get newly diagnosed. Our last Dementia Chats is recorded along with the others, but we have our new Dementia Chats today, and that'll be at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 if you're Mountain Time, and noon Pacific Time. We'd love for you to join us. I will be putting information out on the blog regarding that shortly after this show, and or you can always go to alzheimersspeaks.com and to the About page, click on Dementia Chats, and it'll say how to enter. Those, again, are all free and are recorded. Some of our blogs that I just want to highlight this last week, we had the Salute to Those Who Served, Building a Better Brain, How to Keep Your Brain Active and Prevent Memory Loss. There was information on Memorial Day and Forget-Me-Nots, both by Michelle, again, our intern. She just does such a nice job. And again, if you are looking for an Alzheimer's Association anywhere in the world, check out Alzheimer's Disease International. If you are looking for a more holistic approach, you may want to check out Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation. Don't forget about the Purple Angel program, too. You can find out information on our About page regarding that. I would be glad to help you get up and running with that. And, of course, the Lewy Body Association, the Frontal Temporal Lobe Association, and then the National Aphasia Association all have specifics that can help you. If you're looking for a trial, you can go to alzheimersstudies.com or the Alzheimer's team. And don't forget about keeping engaged. Music First with Choral Health does a great job utilizing music to help us stay in touch with one another. So let me go ahead and introduce our second guest here. We are lucky to have Dr. Shubin with us, and he is a certified neurologist specializing in movement and sleep disorders as well as degenerative disorders like Alzheimer's disease and multiple sclerosis. He was named in LA West magazine the best physician in Los Angeles. And he also is a clinical professor for the Department of Neurology at USC and sees patients in his practices in California. Dr. Shubin is also active in research, and that's really what he's going to talk to us today about. He is the director and principal investigator of Neuro-Therapeutics, Inc., and he continues to provide opportunities to his patients to be involved in cutting-edge research in neurology. Currently, he's involved with a Phase 3 clinical study of LMTX, and that is for patients with early Alzheimer's. And we'll let him talk a little bit more about exactly what that all includes. So, Dr. Shubin, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Good morning. Thank you very much for that generous introduction. I'm feeling well this morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you on with us. Can you give us briefly, what is Alzheimer's and how is it caused? That's always a general question everybody wants to know about.
Well, Alzheimer's is a degenerative disease, and we've recognized that it's pathologically, there have been two key characteristics that were identified, namely what are called the tau, or the tangles, and then the plaques. And for the last 25 or 30 years, the focus on research and on therapeutics has been on the plaques. And now, though, we've conducted some large clinical trials in the last few years, which unfortunately were disappointing in that while we were able to eliminate the plaques, patients didn't get better. So now there's a shift to think that perhaps the plaques are more of a response of the brain, perhaps even a healing response in part, although there's still some evidence that parts of it could be degenerative to the brain. But now we're focusing on the other side, the tangles. And a number of years ago, we found out that the tangles were caused by problems with metabolism, namely what's called the tau protein, which is involved in helping transport nutrients and particles along the pathway of the neuron down, from the cell body out to the periphery. This is something very special in nerves because nerves are extremely long cells. And in the case, for instance, of a motor nerve, you may have a cell that is perhaps 2, even 3 feet long. So this is an extraordinarily, difficult thing to maintain metabolism, and the tau is involved critically in helping the nutrients flow down from the cell body, the processing, into to the end of the nerves. But we're seeing now that there can be problems in tau, and we've now found some drugs that tentatively can help stabilize what the degeneration of tau, and we hope will preserve nervous function. So we don't really know what triggers it in a small number of patients. There's hereditary problems, but for the majority of people, we really still don't know what causes Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah, and that I know that frustrates many, and probably you researchers even more.
Well, that's certainly trying to find out what it is. Is there something in the environment? Is there other hereditary factors we haven't recognized? So it is certainly still the billion-dollar question, and it's gone unanswered, not for lack of trying.
Yeah, we were just talking earlier that, 60 Minutes had done a study following people in a continuum care, and some people that were diagnosed with dementia when they autopsied their brain had no plaques and tangles, and then others that had absolutely no signs of dementia or weren't diagnosed had plaques and tangles, and so I've heard that's kind of thrown things for a loop too.
Well, especially the emphasis is more on the plaques, and that doesn't correspond very well. Tangles, there's a much better correspondence between the pathology and who has it and who has pathology. But there are other factors that intervene, namely intelligence. That if the higher intelligence you are, the more you can compensate, at least early on. You have what's called your cognitive reserve. Although, interestingly, then when people do exhaust it, their decline usually is steeper. So if you have more native intelligence to start with, then you may have a greater capacity to handle the early insults. But later on, it does catch up with us. Okay.
So what would you recommend is the best way for people to get a diagnosis? Who should they go see? That's always the, when I go speak, can I go to my GP, or do I need a neurologist, or is there a specialist within neurology or a gerontologist? So what would you recommend?
I would recommend that they, for the most part, need to see a neurologist. There aren't that many primary physicians who have enough of an interest in specialization. A gerontologist may be able to, but they're still few and far between. So if you happen to live in a community where one's available, a gerontologist certainly would be a good alternative. There are more neurologists, and so that's where you should probably start, because dementia is a syndrome of which Alzheimer's at the present time is the most common cause in the United States, but there are a variety of other causes, and they have to be identified and singled out, because Alzheimer's is still a diagnosis of exclusion, so we need to start by ruling out other conditions. Probably one of the more important is something called normal pressure hydrocephalus. About 5% of people with dementia have it, and it is curable by a relatively minor surgery. So we certainly want to make sure that's picked up and identified. And all too tragically, I see patients too far in the disease course to benefit from the surgery because someone didn't do the workup. It was just, you have dementia, and that's as far as it went. And so that's a tragedy when that occurs. The second thing is vitamin B12 deficiencies, turning out to be very common and getting more common in part because of some of the other drugs we use, namely drugs to help prevent acid formation in our stomachs, interfere with our abilities to absorb B12. And so a few percent of people with dementia have truly a vitamin deficiency, which, if recognized, early on, could be eradicated. Unfortunately, with B12, generally when you give it, you don't restore, but you prevent more damage from occurring. And then there's some other things such as subdural hematomas, fluid on the brain, sometimes a benign tumor. Sometimes strokes can look the same way, and you certainly want to treat that differently, namely get at the root causes. So there's probably a dozen things that need to be looked at and ruled out, and it's important that in every single case assumptions not be made, and in fact someone go through the diagnostic workup to not miss a curative procedure or medication. Every time that happens, that's truly a tragedy.
I agree. Can you tell us a little bit more about the research opportunities that you're conducting regarding Alzheimer's and dementia?
Sure. I'm involved in a trial now which is looking at an agent to help prevent the formation of tangles. Tau-Rx is the name of the company, and this is a drug that is a derivative of an old common compound, methylene blue. And it turns out that these compounds, a variety of compounds, were screened, and it turns out this had some of the greatest activity about preventing the tangle formation. The original research was done in Scotland, and then this led to the formation of a company, which is based in Singapore. But the study itself is now a phase 3 study, and it's going on worldwide in about 25 countries and in multiple sites in the United States. And in fact, there's trials for both people with mild disease, like I'm doing, and moderate disease as well. So it's an opportunity for a fair number of people to participate. Different sites are looking for different populations of patients. But it's a phase 3 study, which means, a certain percentage of patients are getting placebo and others are getting active drug for about 13 months. And then at that point, everybody gets the active agent in what's called the open label part of the study. And then at the end of it, when all the last patient's data has been collected, statisticians will sit down and will figure out, have we made a difference on people's general performance, which is measured by certain measures patients fill out as well as their caregivers fill out. This is a study that involves a caregiver as well as a patient, because we want to get an impact, not just how many tangles go away, but rather what's the impact on daily life among the people who work with the patients most closely. So there's measures both of the patient as well as of the caregiver, which reflects the family, and to try and get a real picture as to, not just numbers, but how much impact we're having on people's lives.
Okay. Well, that's good. How would people participate in that trial?
They would contact. There's sites on the internet for the trial. Look for TAU-RX, TAU-RX, and then from there they would be directed to a local, the closest site to where they happen to be, and that's probably the best way to do it.
Okay, good.
For those living in Los Angeles, I'm doing the mild. USC is doing the moderate groups.
Okay, and I have a phone number here too of 626-356-0800, and ask for research nurse Donna Sider. It looks like.
Yes, that
she
is
can help
for the. Yes, I'm sorry to cut you off. That's for my site, and we'll if someone's calling from other places, we'll certainly direct them. Give them another number and direct them to other sites that would be closer. But that would be a good starting point for them to get in.
Okay, and then also, can you talk a little bit about the benefits of, why should people get involved in a trial? I know a lot of people are nervous about that. So, what's the benefits to them to jump into the loop?
I'd actually say that it's important to find out what kind of person you are before if you're a candidate or not for jumping in, because whenever I give talks, I also have people hold up their hands to say, gee, do you like to go to Vegas or not go to Vegas? And about the room splits, and I say you're both right. So you don't want to go to Vegas if you're not willing to take a certain risk in gambling. And there is that with research because we're offering something unknown. On the other hand, this is an opportunity to, be able to get access to something, years before it would be otherwise available, that potentially could be, life-changing and for yourself. And then there's the larger aspect, you have something which could truly help other people, regardless how it turns out, to know if this is something which is a viable therapy or isn't. And for instance, for the last thing, we would have, big companies spent lots of money that this other approach working on amyloid would have worked. And now we realize, no, that was the wrong approach. So we've now had to redirect ourselves, and it was only because of volunteers that we actually were able to find out what really is important in this disease. So it's an opportunity then to truly help others, and by the knowledge that will be generated on the basis of the outcomes, because these studies are being put together by, some of the finest minds, working on these problems. And this is a chance then to find out, as humans, how are we on the right track? It's the only way we'll find out.
Yep, yeah, that is very, very true. And I think we have to keep that in mind, that we're not going to find a cure if people don't step up to the plate and help either.
That's exactly right. But again, if there are people who have trepidation and are naturally more cautious, I would say then don't do it. I mean, because that's important too. Research does entail a lot of time on the part of, the patients and their families. And this is a commitment, and people do have to feel comfortable with the whole process, because it's very important once we get started, we hopefully see it through. Otherwise, we won't, get the data. So I really when I myself want to recruit people who have that inclination of, wanting to get what's newest and are willing, to feel that it's a good thing to contribute to knowledge in general, and therefore are willing to put up with all the steps of research, because it's sort of like the Army. Hurry up and wait, because there's lots of time when you have to sit there and, unfortunately, and entertain yourself, because it just takes time to do all the steps to collect all the data properly, and most of the data collection is regarding safety issues. So we really have to get all the data. We want to make sure whatever therapy we come up with, we understand safety and side effects as well as possible, so that patients get a really balanced view in the end. Not only does the drug work or not, but what are the potential side effects? And so we have to be meticulous in our collection of that, so that we're not introducing something, that has risks that we, could have picked up and protected people from early on.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you spending some time with us today. I did find the additional information for the overall website. You can go to alzheimersstudies.com to find the Tau trial there. They also have a Facebook page, again, called Alzheimer's Team, and you can email them at info@alzheimersstudies.com. I'm also going to go ahead and put this into the chat box, all of this information, so that it is there. If anyone has any questions at all, you'll be able to get the phone number as well for them. And I'll just say that the general phone number is 855-786-7259. Again, that's 855-86. I'm doing good. 855-786-7259. I guess I'm having a little dyslexia today.
Not enough coffee after the weekend.
I haven't had any yet this morning.
Thank you very much for having me on, and please keep the dialogue going. It's so important that people get information about this condition and an opportunity to find out about its various aspects, about the total person, listening to your last person on, and I think you do want to keep the whole person in mind, and I think this is so constructive what you're doing. So please keep up the good work.
Okay, well, thank you. You have a wonderful day, and I appreciate you joining us today. Again, we just we're talking with Dr. Shubin regarding the third clinical trial on Tau, and it's called LMTX, and you can find out more information by going to the Alzheimer's Studies. Just go to Alzheimer's Studies. .com or the Alzheimer's Team on Facebook, because so many like to go to Facebook as well. I'm going to go ahead and pull Jane Sweeney back in, and Jane is the author of Caregiver, My Love Story Facing Dementia, and we were having just a great conversation earlier, and I wanted to continue that with you. So thanks for hanging in there with us, Jane. I very much appreciate you being able to take more time with us today. There were a couple of other things that I wanted to talk to you about. One was just regarding the book itself. You've got some very specific chapter headings in here, and I always find it fascinating how people choose to lay out their book and come up with their titles and things. So if you could talk to that would be wonderful.
So thank you. I'm delighted to be on your show. I really appreciate your graciousness, and I really think that your previous guest from Los Angeles helped a lot of people in pointing them in the right direction for the research that is being done, because there are many millions of dollars being spent on Alzheimer's research, and we really do need the clinical trials. And I would encourage all of your listeners to look into their local or the university and research centers so that they can become part of the trials. About my chapter headings, I did a lot of research on how to write and what to write. And I had always wanted to write because I felt that in my family there were some family stories and genealogies about people who had loved learning. So I started with an outline, and then I tossed it out, and I tried to do another outline, and I tossed that out too. And then I said what I really wanted to learn was to have fun writing. And I got Stephen King's marvelous book on writing through Barnes & Noble, and he helped me so much. He said, when you write, you start the idea and let the reader finish with all the details. And so I wrote my chapter titles to make it moving and feeling and fun, like the diagnosis, believing, hoping, trusting. I wanted to win at caregiving like an athlete that wants to win at a game. This is no game, but I had a choice that I wanted to win at how to caregive, and that's the critical thing, your mindset. I thought it was really important to talk about the stress and pressures in caregiving. I thought it was incredibly important to focus on sex and dementia and the sensitivity and sensuality that is so much a part of our human nature. I must digress a minute and tell you that a lot of men, many men, are reading my book because of the way it's written, which is a tremendous compliment. I wanted people to have hope. So one of the chapters is titled, A Beautiful Approach to Caregiving, New Learning, New Ways. I did not like the word respite, but that's been in the medical industry for a long, long time. So I rewrote it. And I rewrote it because respite did not tell me anything. It did not encourage me. And now I want to put in reading and writing and arithmetic, which in dementia means you rest and you reassess and you return refreshed. And also, one of the chapter's headings is a caregiver's wish list, things that could be changed, like emergency room care of dementia patients. And that's where the Purple Angel program is so phenomenal. And Gary Joseph LeBlanc has done so much to educate and to put a training program in for hospital staff and the emergency room staff that will cut down on the amount of medications, the numbers of involuntary commitment. And we're also working with the sheriff department here in Florida, where if the sheriff and the deputies and policemen know how to handle dementia patients. They're working very hard on this. Besides CARFIT, which is a major program for caregivers and dementia patients to learn their awareness of the road conditions and how their car may no longer be adequately adequate for the road and the highways. And these are all programs that we're trying to help people. I can't get in depth into the whole question of driving, which I've addressed in my book repeatedly. But driving with dementia is like a powder keg waiting to go off. It's horrific. And every caregiver needs to go there. Lori, before I let you go and you let me go, I wanted to mention something that I find so wonderful. There is a great deal a caregiver can do to have hope. And I've listed a guide for caregiver, behavioral interventions, such things as never correcting the person with dementia. And what you do is you don't escalate a situation by challenging what was said or what's being done. You can distract and redirect the patient. A lot of times you validate what the patient has done or what they say. You don't try to get them to reason, which is very difficult for caregivers because that's the way we're taught as human beings, to use a cognitive approach, the rational approach. But in dementia, that's being destroyed. And the patient would feel challenged and maybe buck you as a caregiver and resist. And that's where a lot of violence or thrashing by the person with dementia comes in, when they feel confronted or they feel challenged or negative behavior comes in. And there's much that can be done on the part of a caregiver. Even questioning, you can suggest 2 or 3 things rather than 10 things. or you could put out 2 changes of clothing rather than 5. And rather than saying, go get dressed, you could have something like a shirt already available, or offer them a choice in color. There are many things that can be smoothly done each day with a caregiver. Now, I want to say that it's really important for caregivers to take a break, whether that's a walk, an exercise, or whether it's making a phone call. Sometimes that has to be out of the earshot of the person because they may pick up on a couple of words and then get furious. So be careful in where you make your phone calls. The other thing is the Dubin Center here in Fort Myers, the Alvin A. Dubin, D-U-B-I-N, has for 19 years offered free care groups, information, and instruction on all types of caregiving. And they have a Alzheimer's disease home safety sheet. It's such a simple thing as getting rid of the sharp corners or not having the pills available in your purse or in the medicine chest for the dementia patient to have access to. And in my book, I go extensively into how important it is for the caregiver to administer the medications and not leave it up to a judgment for the patient because they're unable to recall what they had and how many that they have.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Oh no, that's great. You know, I just as you're talking, I'm kind of just flipping through your book here, and there's just so much great information in here. You know, you talk about the stress and the pressure of caregiving and how our brain works that we learn through our 5 senses, and we forget that. You know, we really forget how we learn and how others learn. And people with dementia, it's the same thing. They still have those senses, and the stories and the poems, you know, that you have in here, and the pictures are just you can just see the love. It just like jumps out of the book. That, you know, that Bernie was well loved and well respected through the disease process, and you know, by his family and friends, which is really, really neat. And so many nice little short stories. You know, again, this is a book you don't have to sit down and read all at once if you don't want to. You've broken it up very nicely, but it's something that someone could easily do as well. And I just thank you for all of your work, you know, with this. It's been amazing, and I'm thrilled that you've got a sponsor out there who's going to help push this. And I know you've got a couple other books that you're interested in writing too. What are those?
Yes, I want to write a second book, Caregiver, Grief, Guilt, and Gratitude. Mm-hmm. It's going to be perhaps more cathartic for me because I believe that I grieved for so long. And I believe that with Bernie's passing, my experiences through the grief process relied on not only a lot of good reading, but talking with people that help mitigate the pain and suffering. And in gratitude, I began to see what a beautiful life I had had. And I want people to know that it's in thanking God that we somehow are able to give to others. And that life brings joy and peace and humility. And we don't hear the word humility much today. But I believe that it is in being humble that we come to great joy. And it makes us smile when we're humble. You know, we don't have to know everything. We can cut some slack for ourselves. Gone are the days when we need to be perfect, because there's no such thing as a perfect human being. And somebody has a yardstick out there, and they're measuring your behavior, and they're measuring you as a human being. And we're also imperfect. And when you begin to realize diseases take parts of a person piece by piece, we don't have to be perfect.
Okay.
And Bernie said to me one day, he said, none of us get through this life without something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's so much joy and so much happiness, but I want to come to the subject of laughter. It's hard to laugh when you have burdens, whether it be job loss or a sick child. But there are times in our life that we need to cultivate laughter. And Bernie would read 2 comic strips to me every morning. Even way into dementia, when he could take the newspaper and say, oh, it's July 23rd, it's Thursday. And I call that his cheat sheet. For years, he used that to anchor himself because he was such a numbers person. He was a brilliant accountant. And I would say, oh, that means tomorrow is Friday, so we get to go to dinner. And he loved it. It validated what he was doing. And he always read a couple of comics just to get a good day start, a good laugh. And that's so important, whether it's the older movies that we love or whether it's tapes that we love to play. It's how to build in humor into your day and how to laugh. No matter how serious the situation is, it's by building in humor that we really mitigate our anxiety. I find it the best tonic for being worried.
Yes. Well, they always say, laughter is the best medicine, and it really is. And, we so often think that we can't laugh with serious illness, yet it's the one thing that generates all language everyone can relate to, appreciate, and it changes our chemistry, and we don't use it to our advantage. And again, I've said this a million times on the air and when I speak, but I just think this disease teaches us to play again and not take life so seriously. Getting back to the basics that, and getting out of our box of right way, wrong way, and learning to be more tolerant and accepting, of different ways of being, and just really focusing on, like you said, being humble, focusing on making someone feel safe and comfortable and happy. Why did we get away from that? I mean, it makes no sense. When you think of it, it's so simple. It makes life so much easier. And you look at society, we've gotten so far away from such a simple thing to do and a simple way of living and being.
I love the way you place that. You have said exactly what I think this disease is doing to mankind. It's making us refocus on what's important now, what's important each day. And in a way, it takes the burden of all the responsibilities that we don't need and downsizing what we have physically. Many people in the latter part of their life realize they don't need 2 homes. They don't need 3 homes. What they really need is peace that comes with fewer material things. And as my emblems, you can't take any of it with you. And one of Bernie's favorite stories was he never saw a Brinks truck following a hearse. It's so simple. Give away your china. Give away your extra clothes. I had a wonderful young man who is from the Philippines tell me that they sent 23 boxes of everything they could get from the neighbors to the Philippines after the recent tsunami a few months ago. He said, we went through our neighborhood and we said, if you haven't worn it in a year, please donate it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what this disease is actually, I think I feel very strongly, this disease is helping us focus on each other and helping us focus on being a community again and helping us realize that there are many people who are sick. There are many people fighting cancer and brain tumors. There are many people fighting serious illness with children and spouses. And we happen to have dementia in the family, so that we need to focus on what can this do to make us better human beings with compassion. It's not, many people want it cured. Many people want the doctors to say, okay, here's the paintbrush, go out and paint the fence. It's not going to happen that way.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us feel that this dementia is a way to make us more human and more loving. And I think if the caregiver can take a couple of deep breaths, try very hard to reach deep for courage. Try very hard to say, what, Lord, do you want me to take from this? What do you want me to give to you and to my fellow man? It's remarkable how little we need to have peace, humility, hope, and joy. Very important, Laurie, the work you're doing. And I love the fact that your mother's illness changed your life because of what you have been able to do for so many, Laurie. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We're in this together, you know. It's and again, that's what Alzheimer's Speaks is all about, is raising everyone's voice, because none of us can do this alone. I don't care, not one big organization, not one individual. It takes a village, you know. It takes and it takes a global village. The information and the knowledge that is out there, that you can, you don't have to rely on your neighbor next door anymore. To be touched and to share information and to get educated. There's a lot of different ways to be supported, and please don't forget to support others. Don't just take, because you know a lot more than you think you do. And I see that over and over again at our memory cafes. People think they don't know any information, and they're surprised at how much they can contribute into a conversation. And it's great, and how much they can help one another. Because, most of us have been dealing with this a long time before we kind of let the cat out of the bag. And so you've got more history there than you think you do.
Well, that's right. And sometimes when a person shares their fears and what they began to see in their loved one early on is exactly what someone needs to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've had 5 people in the last month say to me, when did you first realize? Because many people are worried. Many people hear the information on dementia, and by the time they hear it over and over from major organizations and major programs, like you mentioned, 60 Minutes, this begins to have a strong effect as they increase their aging, and they don't know where to turn or whether they have a problem that they need to address. And when people get into groups, they may say, like this one woman said, oh, my husband is fine. He's doing just great with his medicine, and I can trust him. And this. Well, one day she came, and she said he'd taken 4 OxyContin and all to the hospital by emergency because she trusted him in an area that she shouldn't have been able to trust him, because he couldn't possibly count the number of pills in relation to what he should take for what. And she taught all of us a lesson that we needed to jump right in and make sure that the medicines were not available to the person. They can't use their judgment. It's not possible. And Lori, I just think your choice of words and what I have heard today are so uplifting. They're positive. It makes caregivers realize that they have a huge safety net out there. They don't have to go alone. They need other people. And the important thing is the sooner they can make a phone call or the sooner they can get to help, which comes in many different ways, the better they will be. And I just have to say that care groups, whether it be for Al-Anon or for AA, they're so important to share your stories. One day, a lady said she used to trust her husband, but she would throw the multi-breakers in her house because her husband couldn't put the stove on. So she was able to keep him at home a while longer. Well, one day she came in, and he had taken the toaster oven from the kitchen because it wouldn't work. He put it on the living room carpeting and toasted his breakfast. So you have to, sometimes you get lucky. And she said that was the last time she left him alone.
Yep. But what a fun story. And it's not laughing at him, it's laughing at the situation and how he was still able to engineer getting it done. Well, if it's not going to work here, I'm going to try something else, and those are very precious moments that I think are wonderful for us to all take toll to. And again, put a smile on your face. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with putting a smile on your face? And we forget about that. It just dumbfounds me. But I did the same thing. I think we just take it so seriously that we forget to just be and really enjoy our relationships. So often people lose their relationships to this disease, and we can't let that happen. We don't need to let that happen. And
recently, a husband who's been caring for his wife for 15 years said that when he was dressing her, that not only would she take his hand and kiss it, but she would kiss the top of his head. How beautiful. Their love is still alive, and he's been a full-time caregiver for about 6 years now. And then another husband was trying to help his wife and said, "Now, come on, honey, I'm going to put you to bed. Come on in the room with me." And she looked at him, and she stiff-armed him, and she said, "Oh, I'm not that kind of a woman." And they've been married for 54 years.
Yep.
So there's many things.
And that can be tough for people, the first few times it happens, like how can they not know me? But then if you look at it, that how much they do, love and respect your relationship, that they're seeing you as a different person and they want to honor that, that's pretty dang cool,
I want to say that a lot of states, maybe most of the states, have Alzheimer's disease initiative programs that they have had in place for many years. And in Florida, we have the ADI, which has subcommittees that meet quarterly. And they not only review what's being done to help the people in the state, but to be forward-looking to make certain that they do the best they can with the driving issue and with CarFit and with the Silver Alert. Many people still do not know about the Silver Alert that was started in Oklahoma in 2008. This is so critical when a person has taken the car and, in effect, is not contactable. or doesn't show up at a place and they end up 3 states away in an accident. People would benefit greatly by knowing all about Silver Alert, and if the state does not have it, they could initiate that with the legislature to make sure that that gets in place. Also, I want to mention how important it is to have the ID bracelet or the dog tags, which I found were more helpful for Bernie because he would never wear a bracelet. Did you want to say something about that, Laurie, and your experience with that?
Well, I just think it's so important for not only the patient to wear some form of ID and contact information, but for the care partner. You know, it's a two-way street, and if something happens to you and you don't happen to be home or with that person, or even if you are, they could wander off, you know, someone needs to know that they need to be looked after as well. And, you know, there's all different types of ID bracelets out there. I kind of like I've been talking a lot with the EMS workers and fire and emergency and police, and one of the problems they say is that, you know, with HIPAA laws, they don't have information. So when they get called to a house, they don't always know if a person has dementia. But if you have an ID bracelet with one of those UBS sticks in it, they can find out that information. You can put in numbers to call. You know, you don't want to put in your Social Security number, but you could put in your medications. You could put in contact information onto who to call so that they could get more information verbally regarding the situation. You could put a little summary in. I'm not sure you should even put your address in there from a safety standpoint. I think the contact information for people is probably more valuable, and that's kind of what police and fire have been telling me as well. But you know, it's important. It's important that we do it and not be afraid. Not, you know, right now I think a lot of times we have ID bracelets because someone's ill, and this is really a safety issue, and safety is about all of us. And you know,
Wonderful.
if you're a team, you have to look at both sides of the coin, you know, that situation.
Yes. What happens when a person has a way to be identified is that it's really an expression of love and caring on the part of the caregiver to anticipate that. And many family members want to know what they can do to help. You might delegate to them and ask them if they could do some research on that and find out. And sometimes children want to give this as a gift. I found it for Valentine's Day. It was a beautiful gift of wanting to stay connected with Bernie. And I told him I never wanted to lose him. And I always wanted to be with him. And this gave him an idea that it was something positive and beautiful and appealing. Now, Laurie, I have to tell you that one of the greatest difficulties I had was caring for myself.
Mm-hmm.
You asked me about the diagnosis, and you asked me about the quality of patients. I think it was very difficult for me to care for myself initially. And one nurse told me one day when I told her how I did not want to take over paying the bills, and I did not want to take over reconciling the bank book because Bernie was always so capable, and he loved to do it for 30 years. Well, she said to me, if the roles were reversed, would he do it for you? And then I realized that I was being asked to love him by doing for him what he couldn't do.
Yep.
And I had to. It was such a challenge for me because everything I did, he would feel insulted if I did it directly. So I had to finesse keeping his executive ego and his worth, his value as a human being, and taking over the things that had to be done to ensure his safety and his health and his welfare and mine. That was very hard for me to do.
Well, and I love the way you framed that too, because we all want to feel purposeful, and that doesn't change just because we get dementia. So I thank you for sharing that. Harry's got a question. I want to pull him in real quick here because we only have about 5 minutes left. Harry, are you there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. How are you?
Good.
Hi.
Do you have a question or a comment for Jane? Or?
Well, I just want to say hi to Jane, but one thing. Now, I speak to a lot of people that was just first diagnosed with this disease, and one of the things that I try to stress is there is life after diagnosis. Just because you were diagnosed with some form of dementia doesn't mean your life is over. There is hope out there. You do have a life. You have to carry on. And you try to carry on as far and as long as you can. You never give up. And so many patients, I don't want to call them patients, so many people that I know tell me, well, Harry, you must have a mild form of dementia. Well, there is no such thing. Let me tell you, that's like saying to somebody you might be slightly pregnant. You either are or you're not. And but what I do is I make the most out of what I have left, and that's the point that we try to stress now that use what you have left and use to the best of your ability. Don't let your care partner overcarry you. You still have a life. You can still do so many things. Go out and do them.
Harry, I commend you on that attitude because you will not only have a broader, deeper life, you will have much greater joy in living. I talked to a gerontologist recently, and he said that one of the things that he found so difficult with his patients is a woman that will walk into his office or a man who is only in their early 60s or 70s or 80s, and they say, I miss so much about my other life, and they're living in the past. Harry, you must have a fuller life. I bet if you look back when you first got your diagnosis that your life has been in many ways richer.
Jane, it's funny you say that because I often make the comment that when I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, that saved my life. Now, why I say that is because I was forced to look inside myself. I was forced to find that inner peace, and I've done it, and my life is so blessed, so richer now than I could possibly have hoped for.
Yeah, and Harry's doing some big things. He's making connections all over the world with, if you're not familiar with his Facebook group, Forget Me Not, he goes out and speaks to communities and is just really, really making a big difference. He'll be part of the program next week when we talk about the Dementia Mentors with Gary LeBlanc and Richard Taylor and Norms McNamara. Harry's doing some big things. Well, I can't believe it's that time. We need to wrap up. Jane, what is the best way for people to get a hold of you? Thank you so much for calling in too, Harry.
Thank you, Harry. People can reach me on my website, which is caregiverdementia.org, or by writing me at Jane Sweeney, 8500 Legends Boulevard, Unit 202, Fort Myers, Florida, 33912. Or they can get my book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or eBooks in the Nook. But most of all, pardon me.
Oh, go ahead.
Most of all, I'll be speaking at Arden Courts, and I'll be attending the Catholic Marketing Network in Chicago and the Florida Council on Aging Convention. That's the Florida Council on Aging. that will be in Miami in August, and I'll be speaking, and these engagements, et cetera, will be on the website. And I just want to say that a lot of people new to the diagnosis of dementia, we have to make sure that we spell dementia correctly. It's D-E-M-E-N-T-I-A, and we all wanted to put a D-I-M-E-N-T-I-A. So whenever, I don't know if you've had that happen, but many people say, how do you spell dementia?
Yep, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jane. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking with you in the future. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show here because we only have about 30 seconds left. Again, please check out Jane's website, caregiverdementia.org. And don't forget to join us on the Dementia Chats webinar this afternoon. That'll be posting to the blog and to our Facebook page here shortly. Until then, we'll see you next week when we will be talking about the newly launching Dementia Mentors program. Thank you all so much, and have a blessed week. Bye now.
It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sebesta here, host of Retire Repurposed. Now this podcast is about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. We believe retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful, purposeful, and fulfilling season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.